delimitation exercise. So which means the first general election to the Lok Sabha where this will come into play is the 2029 election. So then, why bring this now? All that and more we will analyze threadbare with a full panel of women members of parliament. A very special episode of Brass Tacks coming right up. But first, what transpired in the new parliament building today.
नारी शक्ति वंदन अधिनियम 2023 को सदन में पूर्व स्थापित करने की अनुमति दी जाए।
हमारी सरकार ने इस दिशा में कदम बढ़ाया। कल ही कैबिनेट में महिला आरक्षण वाला जो विधेयक है उसको मंजूरी दी गई है।
Women's Reservation Bill.
वुमेन रिजर्वेशन बिल, इसकी शुरुआत यूपीए सरकार ने और खास मैडम सोनिया गांधी जी ने की।
ये बिल साफ तौर से कहता है कि महिला आरक्षण तभी होगा जब पहले जनगणना होगी, फिर डिलिमिटेशन होगा और उसके बाद महिला आरक्षण क्रियान्वित होगा।
अगर ये लाएंगे महिला आरक्षण बिल तो ठीक है, बेटर लेट देन नेवर। बिलेटेड अंडरस्टैंडिंग बोल के हम सपोर्ट ही करेंगे।
2024 के चुनाव में तो आरक्षण आ ही नहीं रहा है। बिल में लिखा है कि पहले ये बिल पास होगा, उसके बाद जनगणना होगी, उसके बाद डिलिमिटेशन होगा, उसके बाद महिलाओं का आरक्षण लागू होगा।
पिछड़ा दलित इसके लिए क्या प्रावधान कर रहे हैं? रिजर्वेशन के अंदर रिजर्वेशन तो पता चला कि हाई प्रोफाइल की महिलाएं आ गई तो भाई तो फिर गांव का क्या होगा?
All right, so let's tell you what this bill exactly says. How is it going to go about the tricky business of reservation for women in parliament and in state legislatures? Basically, it seeks 33% seats, general category seats and reserve seats, to be reserved for women. So 1/3 of the Lok Sabha and state legislatures, as well as the Assembly of Delhi, will have women. The quota will not apply to the Rajya Sabha, neither will it apply to state legislative councils. Now, from this set quota, 1/3 of the seats of the reserve seats, both in scheduled caste category and in scheduled tribe category, will be reserved for SC women and ST women. Reservation in state assemblies and Lok Sabha, like I said, it will not apply to the Rajya Sabha, it will not apply to legislative councils. Many states have legislative councils as well. The reservation of seats will also come into effect, and this is a contentious point by the opposition as well. This will come into effect only post the delimitation exercise. Remember, delimitation is undertaken once roughly every 15 years. The nearest delimitation exercise is going to be closer to 2026, before which the census has to be first carried out. The 2021 census got delayed because of COVID. Now it will likely happen in 2026. So the earliest general election where this will apply, reservation for women, is 2029. Rotation of seats will only happen after every delimitation exercise. So which means once in every 15 years, the 1/3 seats that have been reserved for women will be rotated. So, the question then that needs to be asked is twofold. One, if it's going to take effect only after 2026, then what was the pressing hurry to bring this bill now? Secondly, what happens between now and the bill actually becoming law? So first, Parliament has to pass it, both houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Then it has to also get approval of 50% of all state assemblies, because remember, this is a constitutional amendment bill. And a constitutional amendment bill, especially when you're amending the Representation of People's Act, etc., needs to be approved by at least half the state legislatures. Also, the government needs to fast-track the next census exercise. The delimitation exercise can only happen post the census. The census is already 5 years delayed. The 2021 census, which was supposed to be the last census, was delayed because of COVID. People were not moving, everybody was socially distanced and largely at home. Therefore, the 2021 census was put off. The delimitation exercise, which, mind you, in a small state like Jammu and Kashmir, which is now a union territory, they've taken over a year for the delimitation exercise. So imagine all of India post the 2026 census. Now, the next delimitation will not be before 2026, which means, like I said, the practicality of this quota being applied in a general/nationwide election will not be before 2029. So, the Women's Reservation Bill, the showdown, and the question that's being asked by the India Alliance is A, what's the hurry? But B, also, there are partners within the India Alliance also who are asking, who are not necessarily speaking in similar voices or convergent voices. Now, Sonia Gandhi, for example, when she was asked today in Parliament, she said this bill is ours. We framed it. Now, in the material aspects, yes, 1/3 legislation, 1/3 seats to be reserved. There's going to be quota within quota for SCs and STs. So the Congress is already claiming credit. Then there is another leader from the Congress party, Supriya Srinath, the head of the social media cell. She says this is simply a gimmick for the 2024 elections. Then we have from Priyanka Chaturvedi, the Shiv Sena leader, member of parliament, saying that this is a landmark bill which needs swift passage. Then from the I.N.D.I.A party, Raghav Chadda, member of parliament, has said that this bill has been framed without a will to get it executed. There's also Karti Chidambaram, Congress member of parliament, who says he welcomes the move by the Modi government and everybody should support this bill. Then there is Shakti Singh, who is an RJD leader. And remember, RJD and SP have taken a slightly divergent view on this. He says there's no support for this bill until there is an OBC quota. Now, this is again very interesting because there is no OBC seats. There are no reserved OBC seats. There are reserved scheduled caste seats and scheduled tribe seats. There is Dola Sen, you heard from her a moment ago as well, from the TMC, who says we will support this ban. It's better to be late than never. Also, quotas, Akhilesh Yadav, Samajwadi Party chief, saying quotas for OBCs and minority women must be made clear in this bill. So, divergent voices from within the India Alliance. The government's contention is also that A, this is a bill that's been hanging fire for the last 27 years. The UPA tried to pass it. They simply didn't have the numbers to do so. Now the Modi government is bringing this forth to ensure that it gets passed and that this is a historic piece of legislation. But questions are being asked by the opposition. So let's put that to our all-women MPs panel that's joining us tonight from all sides of the political divide. Aparajita Sarangi is BJP Member of Parliament, Amiben Yagnik, Congress Member of Parliament, Sonal Man Singh, Rajya Sabha MP and Padma Vibhushan awardee, Dr. Fawzia Khan is NCP Member of Parliament. Let me start with you, Aparajita Sarangi. Two questions that the opposition is asking about this bill. Number one, what was the hurry? Because this is not going to come into effect anytime soon. It will certainly only come into effect post-2026. And two, how is this different from the bill that the Congress brought and got passed in the Rajya Sabha?
The opposition has questions and Bharatiya Janata Party and its allies have the answers. Let's go down the memory lane. On 12th of September 1996, in the 11th Lok Sabha, H.D. Devgowda had first tabled the Women Reservation Bill. And at that point of time, it could not be passed. So for the past 27 years, this particular important issue has been pending. And now here is a Prime Minister who has the courage and who has the confidence to bring it on the table and to say with all conviction at his command that it would be passed, and he has solicited the support of all. You know, these kinds of decisions demand a lot of courage, and I think Prime Minister Modi and his team have shown that courage. Now, for the past 27 years, many governments tried to push it. And in fact, I am not saying no to the contention of Sri Adhiranjan Chaudhary ji when he made the remark and was sitting in the Lok Sabha that the Congress had brought it to the Rajya Sabha. Nobody is saying no to that. On March 9, 2010, it had been brought to the Rajya Sabha by the Congress party, and it was passed by 2/3 majority. But here I would definitely like to say with a lot of pride or lot of happiness that Bharatiya Janata Party at that point of time had fully supported the bill. But you know what? The Congress could not build consensus, and the bill could not be passed in the Lok Sabha. So the point is that something which had not been done is being done now. Big thing is happening, okay. And the Congress would try to take credit for it. But the fact remains that here 50% of the population needs to be taken care of. This is a very vulnerable segment of the population. They are extremely important. I am also one of them. The other three friends of mine are also belonging to this segment. And I know how, and we know how important it is, political empowerment. You know, Prime Minister rightly said that yahi samay hai, sahi samay hai. Why did he say that? Because all these years we had been waiting, nothing happened for some reason or the other. It could not happen. Two reasons are there. See, two ingredients are required for this to happen. Number one, a very strong political leadership, political will, as we say. And number two, of course, the art of building consensus. The government must have the art of building consensus, and I think Prime Minister Modi's government has taken all the challenges. It's like taking the bull by its horns. We are aware of the fact that there
in the
are
Lok Sabha,
challenges.
certainly you have a brute majority. In the Rajya Sabha, you're almost near majority. So more than consensus, I guess it's a numbers game. But be that as it may, let me ask Amiben Yagnik. This was a bill that was brought by the UPA. You got it passed in the Rajya Sabha. You couldn't muster the numbers in the Lok Sabha. The text of this, or at least the meat points in this bill, is almost exactly similar to what the UPA's bill was. Why then are you nitpicking? Why not back such a bill, which is a historic bill, wholeheartedly, without ifs and buts?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that when we got the 73rd and the 74th Amendment, you have seen the success of what has happened to women reservation in local panchayati bodies. Let's not talk about what happened at that time and how it was passed. It was passed with consensus, and you have seen the success of women sarpanchas in the country and how they are contributing to parliamentary democracy. That's the first point. And so when we say that we brought this, we did definitely pass it in the Rajya Sabha in 2010, but it could not be passed in the Lok Sabha. Fine, but you had 9.5 years of majority government. And what did you do? Why did the BJP, if it was so much worried and had so much courage, could have brought it? What did it do for 9.5 years? And why at the back end of this particular period, just before 2024, and you come with a bill? Of course, your intentions are laudable, definitely. You are for women reservation, that's what the bill says, and your tabling of the bill shows. But why so many conditions and why so many caveats in the bill itself? Why bring conditions that, well, it will happen only after this, only after delimitation, only after there is a census? And when will you do that? Because there has been a demand for census. You have not done it in 2021. It was supposed to be out. We are late in having that. There is no data available. Where is there data? You don't even have a data of how many women who lost jobs post-corona have re-entered the workforce. There is no data available with the government.
So, ma'am, let me understand your opposition. Your opposition is on two counts. One is that why wait 9.5 years to bring this? And two, your opposition is this is not going to come in time for the 2024 elections. Why are we talking about something that could come post-2026? These are your fundamental sort of contentions. So, Sonal Mansingh, please respond.
Yes, why there should be caveats and conditions?
Sure. So let Sonal Mansingh respond to both those, both those charges from the opposition that look, fag end of this thing, you're just creating some drama, some headline management, some event, and two, it's not going to be activated, it's not going to be implemented from the 2024 election. So you can very well bring it if and when you come back to power a third term. It's anyway going to get activated only post 2026.
9.5 years were not wasted. Thank you for including me in this debate with my wonderful colleagues, my friends also, that so many schemes for women specifically were introduced, also to make women strong economically and socially. Therefore, Janadhana Yojana, Mudra, improving the quality of their lives, Har Ghar Nal, Jal and Ujjwala and toilets and so many things. So the first step was to strengthen their dignity, their power, their earnings, etc. Having laid the foundation, as this is in my understanding, okay, having laid that foundation, now they have come to this, they must have got this bill studied, because once in 2010, every such bill or every such issue has to be revisited it has to be thought over, because even in 13 years, what all has been done, what has not been done, what are the demands, the new issues, the new points of view, the new attitudes developing in a developing society where women are becoming aware and strong and active day by day by day. I'm sure it took time, it is not done in a hurry. The second thing is that this is for 9.5 years, you know. Second thing is, why now, when it will only, if at all.
Yeah.
And I say if at all because, you know, I think it nobody can predict, but I mean one can predict with Prime Minister Modi's will, political will, as Parajita said, and the power to follow the right path, the respect for women, where even the G20 manifesto said, laid emphasis on women-led development. It was a big thing for G20 for the first time. So now, whether it comes in 26 or 27 or 29, but the process has to be started somewhere, sometime.
Okay.
And now is the right time, having laid the foundation, and in their wisdom, you know, let's not always question the political wisdom. And if anyone thinks that this is only politically motivated, I don't think so. Zaka, let me point out the thing that the Hindi, the real thing, is not women's reservation bill anymore. It's the Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam. Fantastic. I love it. What respect, Nari Shakti Vandan, bowing to the women empowerment. So Prime Minister walks the talk, and let it happen. I'm sure that every party will realize that this is for the greater good, and delimitation and all that. See, 21 was COVID year, if you forget. I myself had COVID, and a very bad one. So that census could not have happened then. And then so many things have been happening. Every moment is the right moment. I think well started, with perfectly good intentions, honest intentions, will bear wonderful results.
So let me ask Dr. Fauzia Khan. You know, there are parties within the India Alliance, Samajwadi Party, RJD, who have said, you know, we are okay with this as long as there is clarity and this provision for OBC women, Muslim women within the overall quota. Now, help us understand this. You know, there are no OBC quotas and Muslim quotas even now, even in general seats right now. The only reserved seats are SC reserved seats and ST reserved seats. So what sense does it make to have OBC reserved seats for women, OBC women, and reserved seats for Muslim women? I mean, how does that justification even, you know, hold forth to say that that's why we are opposed to this bill? Because it doesn't have specific reservation for OBC women and Muslim women. There are no reservation for OBC men and Muslim men.
Well, I don't think anyone is opposing the bill at all. These are suggestions for inclusion. While I welcome the move or the intention of the government to at least give some dignity to women, I must say that the timelines and the implementation is the major question here, because this bill has been dilly-dallying in Parliament for the last 27 years. And now, even if this bill is passed as it is, from today, I think even 2029 would be a big dream that this will be implemented, because we have to have delimitation, first the census, then the delimitation, then of course this will come. So, you know, what I will say is that the way this has been dilly-dallying, more than calling it the women's reservation bill, I would call it the women's hibernation bill. Again, one more phase of hibernation we have as this bill is passed also. As far as suggestions are concerned, social justice demands that if there are new communities or if there are new social backwardness which arouses in communities, they should be considered. So what is wrong there?
No. So
about the bill, I would also like to say
the problem there, ma'am, is that essentially what this will envisage is quota within quota. And as you are aware, the Supreme Court has frowned upon this idea of quota within quota, even in the past when it comes to, things like creamy layer or EWS. All of these are separate from the existing quotas, right? So the Supreme Court has been very clear in past judgments, in past observations, that this business of quota within quota does not work. So that's what I want to know. I mean, when you don't have existing quotas for OBC candidates or for Muslim candidates in reserved seats for those communities, how does it make sense to have quota within quota?
See, what I see is that whatever is there for men should be there for women. And when the time comes, we should also include other backward communities as needed. So, as of today, I feel it should be what is there for the general community should also be there for women. But the intentions of the bill are still under question, because if you look at the drafting of the bill, that also seems very faulty, in the sense that the words like commencement is used instead of saying comes into effect. So commencement means what? When will it end? And whether will it end after the 15 years period that they are giving the bill to be completed in every sense. Today also it is said that this bill is just a commencement. So you are beginning it, you are just making a decision, and then it will be refined as time goes on for 15 years.
No,
and in case in 15 years we are not able to do it.
At one level, the sort of, I wouldn't say duplicity, that's a strong word, but where political parties come short, Aparajita Sarangi, is instead of making this a law for parliament and for state legislatures, put the onus on political parties. Political parties have to field 50% women candidates. 50% of the tickets that they give have to be to women. Why can't that be put on political parties?
Well, that's very challenging.
Aparajita Sarangi, yeah. Thank you.
Running the country demands tremendous level of maturity and understanding of issues. See, there are two aspects of the whole thing, this women reservation thing. One is assent of the parliament. An assent of the parliament would come hopefully in the next 2-3 days, both Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, because we would be kind of trying to build the consensus, and the statement is written on the wall that we want this to be passed, and everybody has actually agreed to it. Now, number two, very important, is to arrive at the methodology of implementation. That's very important, and that is the challenge. So I think as far as the methodology is concerned, the government would sit coolly and decide on the tasks that have to be done, whether it is census, whether it is delimitation, and it will take time. See, the administrative procedures and processes do take time. We have to be very meticulous. We just cannot be superficial in handling such things.
But ma'am, in the run up to this session, it was said it's going to be historic. People were talking about one nation, one poll, about changing the name of the country from India to Bharat. And now you have a women's reservation bill, which at least in the material aspects has been brought back from the cold storage from 2010, which the Congress, as you rightly said, was not able to pass in the Lok Sabha. And two, it's going to be history that will be made post 2026. So then what is historic about this session? At least in terms of the bills it envisages to pass.
Of course it is historic. Of course it is historic. When a particular thing which has not been passed in the 27 years is being passed, I think this is something which is a cause of celebration. Across the country, all of us cutting across political parties should celebrate. And for heaven's sake, please don't question the policy and intention of Prime Minister Modi and his government. We want this 50% of the population to really come up and to actually participate in policy formulation also at that level. So I think this is something which has to be welcomed by all. The nitty-gritties would be looked into. It will take time. We have to be very meticulous, we have to be very mature, and we have to be deft at the art of handling all these things. And I think we need everybody's support. It will take time. What's the big deal if it is in 2029?
You had
but
said,
the decision would have been taken in the next 2-3 days.
No, you had said, Amiben Yagnik, that it was the Congress government that brought in reservation for women in local body elections, in panchayat elections and so on. Now, one of the things that we noticed curiously, and this is a recorded fact, it's happened across North Indian states, East Indian states, South Indian states, etc., is this whole concept of Sarpanch Patni. So, the Patni of the Sarpanch would become the de facto candidate where if it was a reserved seat, right. So, in that sense, power was not being democratized, power was not trickling down to disenfranchised or disempowered sections of society. It was actually being shared within the same family. Sarpanch ka patni, sarpanch ban jati hai. How will you guard against the same thing not happening in the case of MP election or MLA election?
Zakka, I think you have not seen the data or the research that has gone into seeing how the women sarpanches have done across the country. And I think you have not seen the reply of the minister also in the parliament, who said that there have been more than 1 lakh women sarpanches. Now, the sarpanch pati is a word that was coined sometime long back. It's been 30 years, and I have myself seen how women sarpanches operate at the village level and at the gram panchayat, and they're doing fantastic work. So I think you better look at all the data and the research and the articles that are being published on data. Where is the data today about how women are doing right now in different fields? And that is, I think, also going to be brought up in this particular discussions. So we as a Congress party are for women empowerment, and the 73rd and the 74th amendment, which was brought pursuant to Rajiv Gandhi's vision, has become a practical solution to bringing women in, giving them affirmative action, empowerment, justice and gender equality. Now this bill which has come, of course, if there had not been these clauses of delimitation, not clause of census, it could have sailed through nicely, and we could have seen the light of the day that yes, we want the women to be in the political arena.
But are you saying that because these clauses and caveats have been added, Congress party may rethink its support to this bill? Are you saying that?
No, there is no question of rethinking. We would definitely question that when will you bring the delimitation thing? Is there a time limit set? When will you do the census? Because there has been a demand for the last 5 years. Then where is the census? What is wrong? Why they can't? If there is so much political will, I would not use the word like courage and decision making and whatever, but it has to be a political will. Why is the caste census not done? Why are you not having a time frame for this, and you're putting it in a women reservation bill? So women empowerment will be delayed.
Let me go back to Sonal Mansingh, and again I come back to this rather contentious issue of quota within quota. I don't think that is something that by law the Supreme Court has encouraged or has given its vetting to in any case. Even when you have the normal quota, which is for educational institutions and government jobs for OBCs and for economically weaker sections, the creamy layer is kept out of the OBC quota. The economically weaker section is a separate percentage, again outside of the regular quotas. This would be the first time where we have double quota. A woman who also happens to be either SC or ST will then have 1/3 of SC and ST seats reserved for her. How does that work? I mean, the whole idea of reservation was you are a disempowered community, you are a disempowered group of citizens, you are empowered by certain number of seats, a certain jobs, a certain seats in educational institutions are reserved for you. But this idea of a double quota, how does one justify that? How does one rationally explain that?
Yeah, it is a tricky issue, and I often feel that it's like Abhimanyu's Chakravyuh. Quota within quota. Now, where is the gender equality when we talk about quota within quota? Because if you say OBC, then it equally applies to man and woman. If you say SC, ST, or whatever, all these different denominations, they apply equally to the man and woman equally. So then we are again making some, I think there is fallacy in understanding that you separate men and you separate women when you say this is OBC group, but women OBC have to be given more. I don't know how they are going to contend with it, but to me this quota within quota, as Honorable Supreme Court you were quoting Supreme Court's judgment, that it is somewhere a little tricky, very tricky. And I cannot say more than that I personally don't think quota within quota should be encouraged.
Dr. Fawzia Khan, you know, when original reservations were brought forth, and you can go back to the Constituent Assembly debates, there was a time limit that was intended, at least by the framers of the Constitution. It was 15 years or 20 years, by which time they believed and they felt that the disempowered groups would be brought to a certain level where you don't need the you don't feel the need for reservation, right? It's been 75 years, that reservation is still existing, and perhaps rightfully so. Those disempowered groups have still not reached where other groups are educationally or social backwardness wise and so on. Now, in the case of the women's quota bill, it will, the seats itself, the rotation of seats itself will only happen once in 15 years whenever delimitation happens. So, this quota, as has been intended, will continue for a number of years, perhaps even generations. If the idea of reservation is to bring a disempowered group to a certain level where it can stand on its own, it can fight, it can ask for its rights, and it can compete on a level playing field, then this 15-year clause, changing seats or rotational seats for every 15 years when delimitation happens, that defeats the purpose of having reservation in the first place.
Well, in a way you are right, because if you go through the Constituent Assembly debates and particularly the speeches of the women members there, you know, you can see, like for instance Renuka Ray, if you read her speeches, you will see there is an inherent faith that is there. And there is a faith that we don't even need reservation because we have faith in our constitution, and the picture of society will change as time moves forward. But it hasn't happened. And it's very, very unfortunate that whatever faith these freedom fighters and these members of Constituent Assembly had in the system has actually failed them. Their faith has been eroded. So we will still need more time. And if this goes on this way, you are right that we may not reach our destination, but our ultimate destination is to bring dignity to the woman. And even the title of the bill suggests that. But one question I would like to ask here, that when we moved out of the old building of the parliament, when we moved into the new building, and we are talking, first bill is the Women's Reservation Bill.
Yeah.
Why wasn't the tribal woman president of our country invited for this session? This is, a question which my mind doesn't answer to me. The president, a woman president who comes from a deprived community, she should have been there for this.
Okay.
Farewell
Raja
to the
Sarangi,
old
quick
building,
response,
walking
30
into
seconds,
the
I have
new
to wrap up,
building.
specifically to that question that Dr. Fawzia Khan asked.
See, I can only say that we are very proud of the fact that President Draupadi Murmu is the president, and she is a female, and she is a tribal, and she has gone through very difficult phases in her life.
Okay.
And I tell you, the government of Prime Minister Modi and all of us have tremendous regard for her, and on every occasion, we look forward to her blessings. And she's always there. So it is finding fault always which doesn't look good. Cynicism is a disease which these people suffer from. Today is a great day for the women of the country, and I think all of us need to celebrate.
All right.
I can only say at the end that there would be discussion for the next 2-3 days.
Correct.
And everybody is entitled to his or her opinion. There are doubts in our minds. I understand. I heard 2 doubts here which were very well put forth by all of you. But the fact remains that we need to tell you that the government has gone through the whole thing, has actually thought through. We have gone into the minutest details, and when the Minister of Law will answer the questions, I think all these doubts will be set to rest.
I got to wrap it up at that. Thank you very much for this discussion. To all our women MPs panel who joined us tonight on this special discussion on what is a historic legislation, the Women's Reservation Bill. Yes, there are questions on timing, questions on when it will come into effect and all of that. Those are political questions, but sometimes we need to separate the politics and look at the big picture. And the big picture is this is a massive move towards empowering women and greater representation for women in our legislatures and in our parliament. Joining us now is a very special guest. Dr. Tamilisai Soundararajan is the governor of Telangana and somebody who is a big advocate of reservation for women. One of the first decisions, ma'am, that's been taken by the Modi government in this new parliament building is to bring the Women's Reservation Bill. As a woman who's been a woman politician, has been around, has been doing political work for a very long time, as a Karyakarta, then as a state president, and now as a governor, what does this moment encapsulate for you?
First of all, I thank our Honorable Prime Minister for making the dreams of lakhs and lakhs of women into a reality. And this will motivate more women to take part in the politics, in the social life, and the society will be benefited. Because when a woman is in the public life, definitely the society will be benefited. And I can imagine that Tamil Nadu will have more than 13 MPs, 77 MLAs, and there will be 179 parliament members, women parliament members, and more than 1,362 MLAs all over the country.
Okay.
And this is a great lead by our Honorable Prime Minister, and it's a great leap in the Indian politics.
So there are questions really also being asked, ma'am, by the opposition. Two questions. One, if this whole thing is going to come into effect only post-2026 and perhaps the first general election will be the 29 general election, then why the hurry? And second, also this tricky subject of quota within quota. So SC/ST women will have 1/3 of the SC/ST reserve seats reserved for SC/ST women.
As our former President Abdul Kalam says, dreams transform into thoughts, and thoughts transform into action. So this transformation into action may be different types. And 15 years, and I really appreciate it because the women should get empowered. And when they say that it will be under rotation, and that is also actually when we see it is positively, it is positive. When we negatively seen, it's negative. So women will have the pan state presentation. It is not confined to one state, one parliament constituency. So the women will have opportunity to contest from different parliament constituencies when it comes on rotation. So let it take it as positively.
All right.
And another thing, we need some time because I belong, even though I am occupying the vernacular post. I was the president of BJP. And when there was no constitutionally 33% reservation was not for the legislative post. But the party had 33% reservation for the party posts. So women like me were able to emerge from the Karyakarta to a leader.
All right. Ma'am, thank you very much. Paucity of time, but thank you very much for joining us. That is Tamilisai Soundararajan, the governor of Telangana, with her thoughts. Now, let's shift focus to the other big story that we're tracking here on Brass Tacks, and this is a major diplomatic showdown between India and Canada. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau claimed a potential link between Indian government officials and the killing of a Khalistani radical, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. In fact, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was wanted by the Indian government, was killed in a targeted shooting that happened in Surrey in British Columbia. This was back in June of this year. India has strongly rejected all the allegations by Justin Trudeau. In fact, the MEA released a very strongly worded statement saying that the charges are absurd and motivated and meant to divert attention from the activities of Khalistani separatists inside Canada. The MEA has also said that such unsubstantiated allegations simply seek to shift the focus away from Khalistani terrorists and extremists. The Canadian High Commissioner Cameron McKay was summoned today and he was told that a senior Canadian diplomat is being expelled. This was in response to Canada expelling a senior Indian diplomat in Ottawa, Pawan Kumar Rai. The deterioration of ties was evident at the G20 summit as well, with serious charges from the Canadian government. Is it time now for India to harden its stand and send out the clear and unequivocal message that until Canada stops giving safe haven and sanctuary to these Khalistani elements, the relationship cannot be back to normal?
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
And as of today, and as a consequence, we've expelled a top Indian diplomat from Canada.
All right, joining us now on this talking point, Terry Miliuski is the author of Blood for Blood, 50 Years of the Global Khalistan Movement. Kamal Sibal is former Foreign Secretary, and Puneet Sani, author and Khalistan expert. Terry Miliuski, when a Prime Minister of a country stands up in Parliament and makes extremely serious allegations against a foreign government, it has to be backed by some form of evidence. Neither has Mr. Trudeau said that in his brief intervention in Parliament, nor has the Canadian government shared that either publicly or with the Indian government. So on what basis is he making this allegation?
Well, we don't know. That's the problem. There's a giant hole in what the Prime Minister is saying. Where's the evidence? The problem starts with the whole allegation in the first place. The allegation that a series of Khalistani leaders, well, okay, it was only three, and one of them died of leukemia, and it wasn't really much of a series. But anyway, the idea was, then this was put about by the Khalistani movement generally as an article of faith, that because these three Khalistanis died in sequence, therefore it was the work of the Indian government, excuse me. And now we are still in the situation where we have before us no evidence whatsoever that Indian government agents were responsible for this killing. Now, for the Prime Minister, as you rightly point out, to step up and say, this is our conclusion. I mean, he says, of course, well, it's a potential link, and these are credible allegations. He's not saying case closed, but he's acting like it is case closed. He's brought it up to Prime Minister Modi, and he has acted upon the conclusion by kicking out a senior Indian diplomat. So the situation now is that he absolutely has to produce the goods. If he doesn't have the goods, he's finished. He's finished if he doesn't have the goods. He has got to step up and say, he can't just say, oh, it's classified, I can't talk about it, I can't jeopardize the investigation. Well, he's just jeopardized it. He's announced his conclusions in the House of Commons. And the police, by the way, the police have not identified the shooters. They hadn't arrested anyone.
Exactly.
How does that happen, that you don't even know who shot?
Exactly.
Who the shooter was?
I
I
believe this happened in the middle of June, and we're now in the middle of September. In the last 4 months or so, we have not seen anyone charged for this crime. There has to be a name in a charge sheet.
Yes,
and then we know who the person responsible for that killing is. But Kamal Sibal, there is a larger sort of issue here, and that is that Mr. Trudeau is doing this for his own domestic politics. Clearly, he is dependent on parties like the National Democratic Party of Jagmeet Singh. There are other smaller coalition partners, and he wants to play nice boy with them, play to those galleries. In the process, what he is costing is the India-Canada diplomatic relationship. Kamal Sibal? All right, we've lost his video. We'll try and go back to him in a minute. But Puneet Sani, please explain that to us. For domestic political compulsions, would any leader want to put a very important diplomatic relationship in this kind of jeopardy?
No, the thing is, Thank you, Zaka. Like this has been going for a very long time, and you have to understand the character of Trudeau. So I'll just give you two examples of what a character Trudeau is. First, if you see, he has immediately backtracked. When the Indian response came, so he is in a way like Khalistani, like you saw Bindranwale, like you saw Deep Sidhu, like you say Amritpal, and they understand only this: if you act firmly, they say pull sagi pulls and flee. Now, the second thing is, this has actually happened in 2018 as well. And I would really like to address the Canadian audience that may not know what kind of a person Trudeau is. In 2018, when there was a big fiasco in India, when he invited a convicted Khalistani terrorist, Jaspal Atwal, and it became a fiasco. What did Justin Trudeau do? He basically, through his national security advisor, tried to peddle this lie that actually somehow rogue elements of Indian security agency had kind of did this invitation and brought this Khalistani with Trudeau. No, this is so outrageous, and it became controversy. I think the NSA name was Daniel Juan, and at that time, and then he had to backtrack. So he actually has a history of weaponizing security agencies to get out of international fiascos. So he's a very petty person, and of course, he's compromising because Canada and India should be allies, but because he feels he is humiliated here. So now he has two options: whether to swallow that he is, giving a free rein to these dangerous Khalistanis, or otherwise, double down. And he has chosen to double down, which is of course, bad for the Indian-Canada relations. But in a way, it's good. Like all this nonsense is actually coming out now.
But Terry
people are becoming aware of it.
Isn't it tone deaf? I mean, the whole world is looking at this. You have all the G7 countries, the entire West, from the United States to UK, Japan, all of them courting India for various reasons. Many of them feel that India would be the serious country to challenge China because US-China is supposed to be the great power competition of our times. All of them are courting this country, and there's one G7 country which is sticking out like a sore thumb. I mean, doesn't this appear politically tone deaf?
Well, it makes no sense at all, does it? I mean, you rightly pointed it out, but the thing is that the mistake I think many people are making now is they're looking at what Trudeau said yesterday in the House of Commons in Ottawa, and they're thinking, well, no prime minister would ever stick his neck out this far unless he had the goods, unless, obviously he has good judgment, he wouldn't have been elected. But listen to the story that Puneet just told you. This was a case where nobody in the prime minister's entourage on an important visit to India, nobody realized that it would be a bad idea to invite to dinner, to the prime minister's dinner at the high commissioner's glittering reception, somebody who had been a convicted Khalistani terrorist. They didn't see that that would be a problem. So we have good reason to doubt the judgment of not just the prime minister, but the people around him. So now they have obviously made a judgment that the evidence is good enough to create this complete breach in relations, which were previously frosty and now I think are in a deep freeze. Forget the free trade agreement. And he's going to do this on the basis of what exactly? And you mean to tell me that they haven't even identified the shooters yet? The police haven't said anything about some deep dark plot by the Indian government.
Colonel Sibal, India has, of course, retaliated for the expulsion of the Indian diplomat. They've retaliated by expelling a Canadian diplomat. But beyond this, should India send out a strong message, and how so? I mean, what would be the diplomatic next step if India wants to send out this message that, this is unacceptable? You cannot, the Prime Minister of a country cannot stand up in Parliament and make these allegations without producing an iota of proof. Kamal Sibal, that's to you, sir.
I don't think we should now take another step beyond what we've done already by reacting very sharply to Trudeau's statement in Parliament. I have rarely seen an Indian statement that is so sharp. And we have also expelled a Canadian diplomat. Now, if the situation is to escalate, let it be done on the Canadian side. And then we can explore options.
Why would you say that?
It doesn't serve our purpose to escalate at this stage. As it is, the trade talks have been held up. They're not going to continue. And they're not going to restart in the foreseeable future unless this issue is out of the way. So even there, the relationship will go into some kind of a freeze. Now, There are some issues with regard to how we treat the Khalistani activists there, because they have those OCI cards or PIO cards, and they can enter India. There are connections there. Whether we can take some steps in that direction to make sure that the designated radicals, whose identity we should know, and we should have by that time identified them, we can deal with them in this manner, and we can take some other steps with regard to the operation of the Canadian High Commission here and the very close connections with Punjab. But I don't think at this stage we need to escalate. And I can't see in what area we can escalate. It's difficult difficult to see that, but it's not the end of the story, Jaka, because he's made this statement in Parliament. Then, for his own reputation, for his own political future, he has to follow through. He can't step back. He can't suddenly say that no, I didn't have evidence. This is not reliable evidence. I sort of misspoke, or I went beyond my writ in Parliament. He's not going to say that. The point is, he's got a minority government.
Yeah.
He's highly dependent on these 19 Sikh MPs.
Correct.
And Jagmeet Singh, whose links with the Khalistanis are not very clear, but he refuses to acknowledge that there are Khalistani extremists in the country. Now, his support is important. Otherwise, he will no longer be Prime Minister, because he's got a minority government. So he has to save his skin. He's not been able to figure out.
Let's be clear that Mr. Trudeau is doing this to pander to a domestic political constituency, which he feels he needs to be on the right side of, because otherwise his government will fall. And if this has nothing to do with diplomacy and the actual allegation that he's come up with. All right, we're getting a piece of breaking news. And I think, Kawal Sibal is here, so he can weigh in once we play this breaking news out. So Canada has now updated its travel advisory for Canadians traveling to India. And it says, please exercise a high degree of caution before traveling to India. Now, I find this rather bizarre. I mean, this is not Afghanistan or Pakistan or South Sudan. This is India. This is a functioning democracy. Why would the Canadian government want to, now having done this, issue a travel advisory to its citizens, asking them to exercise a high degree of caution? Now, two things, Kawal Sibal, and you can weigh in on this as a former diplomat. Would this not be seen as A, escalatory, and B, what is the basis of this travel advisory? I mean, India is not an unsafe place for Canadians to travel in.
Firstly, what he really has in mind are Sikhs from Canada traveling to Punjab. Otherwise, there is the danger to non-Sikh Canadians who want to travel to India. So this is part of the same thing, but done indirectly. That if you are insecure on Canadian soil because of Indian agents are killing these terrorists, you may be insecure on Indian soil. That is one. The other thing is that Canada doesn't send many tourists to India, so they can issue this travel advisory. It doesn't have much meaning. We can issue some kind of advisory to the students going to Canada to be very careful in wanting to go to Canada for studies. Discourage them. This can also be done, but I don't think that will be a popular move at this stage. Okay. But there are things that we can do. But one point I want to make, Jaka, which is very serious, which is that indirectly he's equating India with countries like Iran and North Korea.
Exactly.
Who've been accused of killing dissidents or opponents on foreign soil. This is shameful for Trudeau.
Exactly.
To insinuate that kind of a thing. And I'm also surprised that the U.S. National Security Council and the Australian Foreign Ministry have also expressed concern at his allegations. So he's the Five Eyes getting together. This also shows that Canada behind the scenes is desperate to get support from others, because he raised this issue with PM in Delhi and was snubbed.
Okay.
and has been snubbed again very strongly by the Indian Foreign Office.
Okay.
I think at this stage, let's leave it at that and then see how
Puneet
it
Sani, final
progresses.
word. I got to wrap up in 30 seconds, please. Yeah.
So
Thank
I
you.
strongly disagree with Ambassador what Ambassador Sibal said. So for example, he said it's coalition constraints which is driving Trudeau policy. But as I have actually shown, even when he did not have the constraints in his first term, he went out of his way and to silence Sikh voices against Khalistan. So I have a case that it's actually ideology that is guiding him. And the other, I would say, what the Indian government should do is basically ban the WSO, which is basically leading to all these things. And that is totally in our hands. That is not escalating diplomatic row. And I think that needs to be done because they have infiltrated the Canadian institutions like Muslim Brotherhood, and they have made, undermined the Canadian democracy. But that is the biggest threat to Indian national security.
We have to leave it at that. But thank you very much, Puneet Sani, Kamal Sibal, and of course, Terry Miliuski for joining us. Like I said, this story just goes from weird to bizarre now with a travel advisory asking Canadian citizens to exercise a high degree of caution while traveling to India. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll catch you again tomorrow night, same time.
Fireworks in the India-Canada bilateral ties because the expulsion of any diplomat is normally the standard protocol has been like that. It is always reciprocated, at least if not more than in the same manner. So we can assume from here onwards that very soon Canadian diplomats may have to back his or her backpack and go back to Canada, and if it will remain at this level only or it will further go down, because the bilateral ties between the two nations have already been rolling down only in the last several months, ever since especially in the Justin Trudeau's government. We have seen his last visit in 2018 was also marred by controversy because he was surrounded by some elements who were part of larger pro-Khalistani movement in Canada, and Indian government did not want to be seen as allowing those things or those leaders or be part of those those celebrations that Canadian Prime Minister was having in India. So that was also very damn quick visit of Justin Trudeau. After that, he had come for the G20 summit level talks in Delhi. In the talks also, of course, the issue of Khalistan had taken center since now in the India-Canada bilateral ties in the last 2 years at least, where India has continuously raised the security aspect of Indian diplomats and foreign officers in Canada as well. So in that context, Prime Minister had raised the issue of Khalistani movement and the separatist element being allowed of space in Canadian soil, to which Canadian Prime Minister had said that he is letting these things apparently stay in Canada in the name of freedom of expression and democratic right of protest, but these rights should not be part of vandalism or Gundism that these Khalistani people have been trying to do in Canada. They have been spreading an anti-India agenda. They have been asking for annexation of a part of India. These are all things that concerns India, that is highly irresponsible on part of Canadian government if it is allowing them, because it will amount to having allowed a movement that was against India's sovereignty and integrity. So overall, the bilateral ties we see are going to go down not very well from here onwards, and what kind of reaction India is going to make on the allegation of Justin Trudeau on Indian agencies' role in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nichar and another dreaded Khalistan leader in Canada, that remains to be seen.
Statements by ministers. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijar. Our top priorities have therefore been: 1, that our law enforcement and security agencies ensure the continued safety of all Canadians, and 2, that all steps be taken to hold perpetrators of this murder to account. Canada has declared its deep concerns to the top intelligence and security officials of the Indian government. Last week at the G20, I brought them personally and directly to Prime Minister Modi in no uncertain terms. Any involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is an unacceptable violation of our sovereignty.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Moments ago, the Prime Minister.
As you would expect, we've been working closely and coordinating with our allies on this very serious matter. In the strongest possible terms, I continue to urge the Government of India to cooperate with Canada to get to the bottom of this matter. I know many Canadians, particularly members of the Indo-Canadian community, are feeling angry or perhaps frightened right now. Let us not allow this to change us. Let us remain calm and steadfast in our commitment to our democratic principles